Hello, welcome to the Mercy Connections Women's Small Business Program TV. Today's episode will be talking about personal financial empowerment for women. I'm Gwen Picallo. I'm your host and the director of the Women's Small Business Program. Today on our program, I'm happy to welcome Carmen Tall, our guest. She is the startup instructor, and she also is the co-creator and instructor of WSBP's newest program, Personal Financial Empowerment. Thanks for being here today, Carmen.
Thank you, Gwen.
So could you tell us, before we get started, how did you get into this work, personal finance?
Most of my career has been in finance, most recently as a mortgage broker. And while I was teaching at Mercy, teaching the startup entrepreneurship class, it became apparent that the women needed and wanted more information on personal finance. We were talking personal net worth statements and cash flow, and I could feel a little bit of tension starting in the room and a little bit of nervousness and trepidation. And as a result of that, they were asking, we really need a personal finance class. We need to get our personal finances in order before we can even think of starting a business.
And that kind of echoes what is going on in the greater national and statewide landscape around personal finances. Here in Vermont, there have been a number of, there's been a lot of buzz around personal finances. Oh, yes. There are a number of task forces and studies that have been done here in Vermont that Mercy Connections has had the opportunity to be a part of. And so we were starting to hear a lot about this personal finance kind of crisis, that people don't have a lot of information about their personal finances. It's also known as personal financial capability or personal financial literacy education. Some of those studies and task forces, Mercy Connections participated in the Enough Said task force. It was a statewide initiative that looked at issues pertaining to women and girls in the Vermont economy. And what they found is that women have significant obstacles to moving forward in their careers. And so this comprehensive statewide study looked at ways of improving financial literacy for women. We were honored to have Pam McKenzie, who sits on the board of trustees at the Mercy Connections, and Dolly Fleming, our executive director at Mercy Connections, sit on that task force. In addition, the United Way of Chittenden County, the Women's Leadership Council, it was fortuitous that they just announced their signature issue, and that signature issue is personal finance for women. We attended the first event and are looking forward to being a strategic partner with the United Way on that. And then also Champlain College has been looking at the state of personal finances in general in the state. Yes. And they've been doing a lot of studies around especially the millennials and all the debt that many of us carry from school. And we'll talk about that a little later. Yes. Carmen deals with the student debt a lot. And so we're in active conversations at Mercy Connections with Champlain College to see how we can better partner to increase financial literacy across the state. And nationally, I'd love to just share a couple of these statistics.
They're pretty interesting statistics, aren't they?
Yeah, and some of them are kind of a bummer too.
They are.
So why, we can be talking about why is this programming relevant to women? Why women-specific personal financials? And so I'll just share some statistics. 40% of women fear ending up broke and homeless. This is a national study. 60% of women report that their greatest financial priority is just getting by or paying off debt, not even really moving forward.
Isn't that frightening?
It really is.
It is.
86% of women do not know how to invest or choose a financial product. And so many of us get these prospectuses in the mail, right, from work.
What is this, Dow Jones? What is that?
And many of us aren't aware of it. We might have it from work. We might have some of these products through work, and we don't understand how to maximize it to work for us. And only 29% of women said they know where to invest in today's market. And that's in comparison to 42% of men who report they know where to invest. And then we can kind of talk about, okay, so that's great nationally, that's what's going on. But what about here in Chittenden County? And some of the reasons that personal financial empowerment is really an acute need in our communities because women have a below poverty rate, income rate, 20% higher than men here in Chittenden County. Most public assistance recipients are women. 90% of those women are the head of their household. 26% of Burlington residents overall, and 40% of families with a female head of household live in poverty. Here in Burlington.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's just, wow.
It's and there's a lot of great programs that are available in the both nationally and here in Chittenden County, but none of them are really addressing the specific needs of women, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. And maybe we can start talking about why women, Carmen.
Yeah,
why
that's
is that important?
Well, we process differently than men. Everybody knows that. But the thing with women is we live longer. Studies show we can live 4 to 7 years longer than men. In addition, we still make 77 cents on the dollar. And then what that translates to is we're going to have less money for retirement. In addition, women often take, maybe 10 to 12 years off to care for children. So that all comes down to less earning power.
And I have a statistic here, Carmen, that kind of echoes that women in the workforce, a study showed that 2/3 of all women in the workforce earn less than $30,000 in jobs that do not have pensions. So there's also that retirement stuff, and Carmen talks a lot in our programming about the state of retirement for women. And that there isn't necessarily the same structures in place for women in the workforce.
Right. And pensions, you don't even hear much about pensions anymore. But even if there's a 401k, a lot of women don't know what that is. They're not aware that their employer offers that, or 403b, or that they're not aware that their employer offers a retirement savings plan.
Or they might not even know how to use it, right?
They might not know how to use it.
Maximizing it, getting matched. This is a lot of language
And
that's scary.
Not getting matched is just leaving money on the table. And how else will they begin to save? And we want to emphasize that a little bit of money consistently goes a long way. It really will. And we'll talk about compound interest, and we'll show them how that works. Walk them through it to say, this is what the number is today. 20 years from now, it's this big.
Well, Carmen, you kind of hit on something that's really cool, is that there are direct impacts that are visible once someone has personal financial education, right?
Yes.
I have a statistic here that that when women have been given an opportunity to have financial literacy, it's decreased credit card behaviors by 60%, those difficult credit card behaviors. Can you talk a little bit about how women interact with money, Carmen?
Sure. Well, I don't know if you'd be surprised to learn that financial decisions are 80% emotional, 20% head knowledge. That's for all of us. And because of that, actually, studies shown that women, once they learn the lingo and the financial literacy, they're better investors than men.
Is that right?
We could pull out those statistics another time. But it's important because money for all of us is just interwoven into every aspect of our life. You can't not play the game. You have to know. And if you don't, you'll end up being one of the statistics. We don't want to see women or anyone going into retirement and heading into poverty. And that's what's happening. So when we start our class, if you think about that 80-20%, no one really addresses that emotional side. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of balance sheets, cash flow, net worth statements, we invest a little bit in the person, in the woman. We have some discussions and play some games and do some strategies that they can help figure out what's their financial process, what affects their financial behavior. since many of those decisions are emotional. Let's get to the root of that first. What makes you tick? What's your little hot point there? You know, is it clicking on the Amazon.com at night, or where are you spending your money and why? So if we can dig down a little bit deeper and establish that, and then each woman can make some goals for her personal life, where she needs to be, how she can improve her spending habits. And this is a function that's kind of cool. It doesn't matter if you have little or if you have a lot. Whatever income class you're in, doesn't matter, because we all need to look at what our spending habits are and how we can make better use of what we have.
And Carmen, I like that you started to touch on some of the things that people who come through the Women's Small Business Program Financial Empowerment class will pick up along the way. And one of the things that I think makes this class different, and you kind of hit on it, was around building that perspective of abundance. I think so many of us, especially women, approach personal finances with this perspective of a lack of abundance. There's not enough. I have to diet, you know, my budgeting is like a diet. There's a lot of deprivation. I can't do this, I can't do that. I have to do this. It becomes a really difficult emotional conversation, right? And Carmen has shared with me before that the #1 national, when nationally surveyed, the #1 concern for women is financial stability.
Absolutely.
That's wild. And now for men, it's respect in the community. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Isn't that
We want
wild?
respect. We women want financial security. We want to know we're going to be okay.
That is fascinating. And so let's talk a little bit more about how this fits into the Mercy Connections greater portfolio of programs. So Women's Small Business Program is one program area of Mercy Connections. The other program areas are mentoring and justice and education transition. And Mercy Connections is dedicated to nurturing self-sufficiency through education, mentoring, and entrepreneurship. And so you kind of hit on it, that we're addressing the whole woman. That's what makes Mercy Connections different.
We're not just a class where you learn the nuts and bolts of a debit and a credit and cash flow and what to do with your FICO score and all of that, although we do address those things. We address the whole person, because we know that financial literacy, knowing the words, is not enough. To be successful in changing your first personal financial status, we need to change behavior. And we need no motivation. If you ever have a habit you want to change, you know how hard it can be. You need people around you to support you, to challenge you, to keep you accountable, and that's what we do under Mercy Connections. We'll show them some mercy. They probably feel bad enough already. They don't need to come in and say, what's wrong with you? Just love on them a little bit, but at the same time, some accountability. And girlfriends, hey, I've done that too. Let's work together and support each other, and let's move forward.
Right, how beautiful.
Yeah.
And so the gender-specific stuff is important. We're trauma-informed here at Mercy Connections, and we practice adult learning, differentiated learning techniques and things like that. And so before we head out, maybe, Carmen, we can talk about what some of the people who have just gone through the inaugural class of Personal Financial Empowerment had to say. Someone said, I have more control than I thought I did. Someone said, I didn't know how to make a budget or work with the small amount of money that I did make. Money is such an emotional thing, and it's a terrifying feeling. There is a way out. There's long-term hope.
That's important. There is long-term hope.
And we're not about dieting or anything like that at Mercy Connections. We're about helping people to get the resources and information that they need to make informed decisions about business ownership and personal finances in their lives.
And you know, sometimes people think, well, I don't have any money, so why do I want to do financial planning? Financial planning is for everyone. It's just not for high-income folks. We even talk about estate planning in our class. You're alive, you have an estate. The students leave with these binders with all their pertinent information in them. If something were to happen to them, where are their bank accounts? Where are their online accounts? And they have a nice folder that they go home with all the pertinent documents in it. And if, God forbid, something should ever happen to them, all their information is there. And I've heard from a lot of estate planning attorneys that when someone passes away, their biggest job is finding where all the bank accounts are.
You just said it.
And that eats into the estate, and everyone needs to do that.
So they're really prepping for all life circumstances.
Absolutely.
And so if someone is interested, if you, a listener, are interested in enrolling in the personal financial empowerment class through the Women's Small Business Program taught by Carmen Tall, you can go to WSBP.org to find out more about the class and sign up. The next session runs February 3rd through March 17th on Tuesdays from 6 to 9 p.m. at Mercy Connections right downtown in Burlington. We'd love to see you. So Carmen, do you have any final thoughts you want to share with us? Any words of hope or wisdom?
Oh, I do. I could go on forever, but it's just from the class we had last semester. It's so rewarding. Since the class is over, I'm still chatting with some of the ladies online, and they tell me how empowered they feel. Like, I can handle this. I need to buy a used car. I know what to do. I'm working on my FICO score, and I know why my FICO score is the way it is. I learned that in class, and I've learned strategies to improve my financial awareness, and just overall, I just feel more empowered. I don't feel so lost when I hear these words and I don't know what they are.
Finding hope and clarity, that's important.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Carmen.
Yeah.
And thank you to CCTV, Rob, and Lauren for letting us come over. We're really psyched to be working with you to do Mercy Connections Women's Small Business Program TV. Thank you.